You've probably heard about the new Global Performance Cache, affectionately referred to as the hash cache. It's a great new enhancement to After Effects CS6, but it mostly takes care of itself, and we'll take a closer look at it in another lesson. But there are some other performance enhancements that can make your day-to-day interactions in After Effects much more responsive, especially when using the new ray-traced 3D features in CS6. The most important one to discuss is the Fast Previews menu button in the Comp Viewer. Here you can control quality settings to speed up your interaction with the application. In After Effects CS 5.5, this pop-up featured Adobe's popular high-fidelity OpenGL options. Popular because most users learned to turn it off as soon as possible. For some reason, OpenGL just never quite got to the point where people felt they could trust it, and consequently, most people just decided to ignore it. Well, in After Effects CS6, that option is gone, and the default preview mode for comps is Adaptive Resolution, where the screen view displays final quality when the mouse is up, but when a layer adjustment takes place, the screen resolution drops as much as it needs to maintain quick interaction. And now there are a couple of other options in here: Draft, Fast Draft, and Wireframe. And there's still a Draft 3D button down here in the timeline. Well, to understand what all of these are designed for, it'll help to know that when After Effects first introduced 3D, there were two renderers available: Basic 3D and Advanced 3D, which gave you goodies like lighting and shadows. Well, as computers got faster, the need for standard 3D was pretty much eliminated, so that by the time we got to After Effects CS 5.5, we were treated to the UI spectacle of a quality pop-up with only one option in it: Advanced 3D. Well, in CS6, when you first enable a 3D layer, a new button appears in the upper right-hand corner of the comp window that displays your current renderer. But it's also a shortcut to your comp settings, where you can choose between Ray Traced 3D and Classic 3D. Classic 3D is the same as the old Advanced 3D. And when you're set to Classic 3D, the Adaptive Resolution preview option works the same way it always did, by reducing the resolution of the render accordingly to accommodate speed. But now, in this mode, Draft is grayed out. Fast Draft takes the place of the old OpenGL Always-On mode, and Wireframe is the same as the old Wireframe mode, giving you a very quick mode to evaluate layout and motion, but not see any layer pixels on screen. When we switch over to Ray Traced 3D, things get a little more interesting. Now that we're in this realm, we're using a pair of powerful new render engines developed by Adobe, codenamed Picasso and Renoir. Picasso is typically what you'll use for your final render. Like its namesake, Picasso renders ultra-realistic representations of your designs. Alright, that has nothing whatever to do with Picasso the artist, but at least the After Effects team has a sense of humor. But when using Picasso, you'll see the full representation of texture, reflections, refractions, shadows, even depth of field. Your final render, Adaptive Resolution, and Draft modes all use Picasso, where Adaptive Resolution simply reduces the number of rays traced by 1/2 or 1/4 and so on until you get reasonable feedback. You can adjust how much things are allowed to fall apart in the Fast Previews preferences. Draft mode doesn't even think about fractions, it simply reduces the number of traced rays per pixel to 1, giving you a rough but useful representation of the final scene. Fast Draft is another matter. This is the new Renoir render engine, and it's roughly equivalent to the old OpenGL Always-On mode, but it still handles the new geometry features and can even show shadows and give you a decent idea of your lighting effects. This can be a very satisfying way to work, even if you don't have a video card that can handle the other features. Related to that, the Draft 3D button in the timeline overrides all of these preview settings except Wireframe and renders your geometry without any lights or shadows whatever. This is a fast way to rough out geometry and useful if you want to quickly toggle back and forth between working views and final render. Just remember that it's here if you get a project from somebody else and it doesn't look as nice as you expect it to. Before assuming that the project is busted, make sure that the Draft 3D button wasn't left on by mistake. And Wireframe shows you the bounding boxes, including depth, for all of your 3D objects, but doesn't show you the objects themselves, which can be useful for checking motion and general layout, but not much else. Note that Wireframe mode only displays the bounding boxes of the objects, not a true wireframe of each object like other 3D apps might do. But on a decent machine with a fast video card, adaptive resolution gives you a great compromise between quality and interactivity, so that's what you'll probably use most of the time. So what should you do if you need to create a ray-traced 3D scene but you don't have the high-end video hardware? Well, now that you know about these different modes, you should plan to lay out your scene in Fast Draft, then switch to Draft to set up your reflections and transparency, and then switch to one of the top options only for the final render. And it's also worth mentioning that this little region of interest, or ROI option in the comp window, can help you a lot in Ray Trace 3D. By drawing a region in your comp, the ray tracer will focus on just that part of the window, so you get a much quicker response when setting up textures or reflections in a ray trace scene. And that's a quick look at some of the new preview modes in After Effects CS6. Get to know them and you'll be visiting this menu a lot more than you're probably used to.